The sound of shovels digging in the dark stopped me cold. I stepped outside, my boots sinking into the wet grass, and there they were, two men hooded, planting something on my land. A 5-gallon barrel with a hazard label. They weren't just trespassing, they were trying to poison my farm. One of them froze, spotted me in the shadows. Shit, he's here. I didn't move, didn't blink. The flash of my shotgun racking echoed through the night. Guess you didn't know what kind of trouble you were walking into, I said. And that's when they realized they weren't the ones hunting me. I was hunting them. Karen Whitlo was everything you expect from someone who thinks they're above the rules, perfectly manicured, confident to the point of arrogance, and wielding her HOA like a weapon. She wasn't just the president of Horizon Ridge Estates. She thought she owned the place. And when her shiny new development started creeping up to my property, she decided I was her next target. At first, I thought it was just her trying to be helpful, sending letters about trivial rules and the occasional lawn complaint. But it didn't take long to see the truth. She wasn't after code violations or neat fences. She was after my land. Everything about her screamed entitlement. The way she walked around like she could make laws on the spot. The way she made sure everyone knew who was in charge. And when I didn't fold like the rest of her neighbors, that's when things got ugly. She sent out her little patrols driving their golf carts like they were the damn sheriff. They'd hover by my fence measuring, noting, looking at everything I did, like I was a child who needed to be taught a lesson. And when they couldn't find a reason to get me to leave, they started making one. Karen Whitlo didn't know it yet, but she just stepped into a game she was never going to win. And I was about to remind her exactly who was the law around here. When I first saw the Mallister farm, I didn't feel like I was buying land. I felt like I was rescuing myself. After 20 years in law enforcement, working the late shifts, breaking up fights, and pulling people out of ditches, I was burned out. My life had become a constant siren, a loop of chaos I couldn't escape. But the moment I stepped onto that 90-acre stretch of land in northern Georgia, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The air smelled different, pine sap, fresh earth, the kind of scent that reminds you that life doesn't have to be a chase. The land was rough, untamed. The barn sagged like old bones, the fences had more gaps than a gap-toothed smile, and the pond looked like it hadn't seen a good cleaning since the Reagan years. But it was mine. All of it. And for the first time in ages, I felt like I belonged. It started small. I didn't notice it at first, the way they began circling my land, like vultures looking for a weak spot. I figured it was just the developers on the ridge doing their thing, building houses, setting up utilities. The signs went up, the bulldozers rolled in, and slowly the neighborhood took shape. But then it started. The golf carts. One Tuesday morning, I was sipping my coffee when I noticed a shiny white cart creeping along my fence line. The two figures inside didn't wave, didn't even acknowledge me, just stared clipboard in hand, as if my land was their property, not mine. They pointed at my barn, at my tractor, at the goats doing what goats do best, being goats. They whispered something to each other, scribbled a few notes, and then zoomed off without so much as a nod. I chalked it up to odd behavior, but it wasn't long before I saw the same thing again. And again. Every few days, a new golf cart would show up, following the same path along the boundary of my land, slowing to a crawl like they were making an inspection. Every time I waved, and every time they ignored me. Then came the drone. I first spotted it on the fourth day, early in the morning when I was working on the west fence. It hovered low, just above the barn, drifting like it had all the time in the world. It wasn't a kid's toy buzzing around just for fun. No, this was different. It moved with purpose, skimming the ground like a vulture in slow motion. It was taking pictures, mapping my property, and I knew it wasn't just some kid's gadget. I didn't make a big deal out of it at first, figuring maybe it was just someone from the new development over there testing out their new drone. But when I saw the same thing the next day and the next, I started to feel something shift in my gut. Then, one afternoon while I was sharpening my brush cutter, I heard something that didn't fit, the sound of boots on gravel. My property behind the barn where no one should be. I set the file down and stepped outside, moving like a man who'd seen trouble before. There he was, a man in a cheap tactical vest, a body camera strapped to his chest, a walkie-talkie clipped to his shoulder. The words, HOA.Patrol were printed across the front of his vest in bold white letters. He was standing just behind my barn, filming my tools, my equipment, my property, like he was preparing to take a report. When I stepped into view, he froze for a second, then scrambled toward a golf cart parked nearby. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice low and steady. The man straightened up, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "We're conducting a perimeter integrity assessment." He said his words stiff and rehearsed, as if he thought he sounded official. "Perimeter integrity," I echoed. "You realize you're trespassing, right?" His eyes widened, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "Sir, the Horizon Ridge Civilian Patrol is authorized to monitor adjacent undeveloped properties for potential hazards." He continued, trying to sound calm, but I could hear the edge of panic in his voice. I didn't let him finish. "Out here," I said, stepping closer, "you're not authorized to do a damn thing." He froze. I didn't need to raise my voice or show him any weapon. There's a certain look a man learns after decades in law enforcement, a look that says you're not in the mood to play games anymore. He backed away slowly, his breath shallow, still muttering into his walkie-talkie as he retreated toward the tree line. By the time Sheriff Wells arrived 10 minutes later, the man was gone. Vanished. No golf cart, no sign of him anywhere. Not a footprint, not a tire track. But I knew better. People don't just vanish unless they're afraid. And the fact that he had run without a word told me everything I needed to know. Someone was behind this. Someone had sent him. And that someone wasn't finished. As the days passed, it got worse. The golf carts came more frequently. The drones flew lower. And every time I thought about confronting them, I knew it wouldn't stop with a simple conversation. This wasn't just curiosity. This was a concerted effort to find something, anything, that could give them a reason to make me leave. They didn't care about my farm. They cared about getting rid of me. By the second week, the tension was palpable. I'd had enough. I decided to keep my eyes open, my phone ready, and document everything. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. I spent the next year repairing everything with my own 2 hands. The barn got a new roof. The porch leaning to the left, like it had grown tired of standing, was straightened. The pond was dredged, the silt and muck scooped out. Every job felt like stitching a wound closed, like I was rebuilding myself, one nail, one shovel full of dirt at a time. Most mornings I woke before dawn. I cooked eggs the way my father taught me, cast iron bacon grease, and sipped coffee so hot it could make me believe in God again. I'd sit on the porch watching the mist rise off the grass, listening to the world wake up, and for once I felt like I wasn't chasing something. I wasn't running from anyone. I wasn't even answering to anyone. It was quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get in a city where it's the silence between noise, but the kind that fills your bones deep and still. This was the silence I wanted, the kind you only find after you've earned it. That is, until the noise came to me. It wasn't until early one morning that the true extent of their plan became clear. I was out in the field checking the fence line when I saw a figure in dark green tactical gear crouching by the trees near my barn. He was wearing the same ridiculous HOA patrol vest, but this time he wasn't just taking notes. He was filming his camera aimed at my equipment, my tractor, my tools, everything I owned. I didn't even hesitate. I walked straight toward him, not hiding, not trying to be stealthy. The man didn't see me at first, but when he did, he stiffened, then jerked his head to the side, signaling to someone I couldn't see. I took a slow, deliberate step forward. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice cool and calm. The man's hand hovered near his radio, but instead of answering me, he just raised his camera higher, like he thought it would intimidate me. "No," I said flatly. "You're trespassing again." His eyes flickered with panic. "Sir, I'm conducting an official inspection under the authority of Horizon Ridge Estates." He stammered, trying to play it off like he had the right to be there. "We're assessing perimeter integrity." "Perimeter integrity," I repeated, feeling the anger begin to build. "You've crossed the line now. This isn't about safety. This is about you trying to make me look like a criminal." His breath quickened. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't let him finish. You're trespassing. Again. I took another step forward, my voice dropping. I spent 20 years wearing a badge, son. I know the law. You don't have any right to be here. The man looked like he was about to say something, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He was out of his depth, and it was finally hitting him that he was messing with the wrong person. He lifted his radio, but I stepped forward again. Not fast, not threatening, just deliberate. He stopped mid-sentence, his face pale, his hand frozen in the air. You're done, I said, quietly, my voice cold. You're done pretending you have any authority here. I could see his panic flare. He dropped the camera to his side, muttered something into his radio, and started backing away. He wasn't walking calmly, no. He was retreating, eyes darting breath shallow, and when he turned to run, I let him go. He didn't deserve the satisfaction of a confrontation. I watched as he sprinted to his golf cart, jumped in, and floored it, speeding down the ridge like a scared animal. But I knew this wasn't the end. This wasn't even the beginning of the end. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sheriff Wells. He answered after the first ring. You need to send someone, I said, my voice low. I've got a problem. By the time Wells showed up 10 minutes later, the man had vanished again. No golf cart. No signs he'd ever been there. But I knew this wasn't random. It wasn't a lone trespasser. This was coordinated. Someone powerful was pulling the strings. The HOA's little stunt was bigger than just surveillance. It was a full-scale operation to take my land. The sheriff and I walked the perimeter together, but I could feel it in my gut. The storm was coming. Karen Whitlo, whoever she had behind her, they weren't going to stop until they had my land. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. I'm done waiting, I muttered to Wells as we stood by the edge of the trees looking out over the fields. Yeah, he replied, a grim smile on his face. It's time to show them what happens when they pick the wrong fight. The quiet that followed the storm was not peace. It was the heavy stillness of something waiting to break, like the air before a thunderstorm. I wasn't the only one who felt it. Sheriff Wells rolled into my driveway the next morning, slow and steady. His truck came to a stop with that familiar crunch of gravel under tires. He didn't need to say much. His eyes told the story. We got her, he said, simply. Where is she? I asked, already knowing the answer. Right where she always is, Wells said, tilting his head toward the HOA clubhouse. Yelling at someone about something stupid. We didn't waste time. I followed him to Horizon Ridge, my truck bumping along the same road that had once seemed so peaceful. When we reached the clubhouse, Karen Whitlo was there, standing on the steps like a queen with her clipboard in hand, lecturing a poor guy who was holding a dog leash. Her voice rang out shrill and demanding. I don't care what the bylaws say, I am the law here. You follow my rules or you can leave. The man was trying to explain himself, stammering, but Karen wasn't having any of it. Then, like a cold breeze, Sheriff Wells spoke. No, ma'am, he said from behind her, his voice calm but authoritative. You don't run anything. Karen froze, slowly turning around. Her smile cracked when she saw Wells. Sheriff, she said, forcing a fake grin. There must be some misunderstanding. I was just addressing a violation. Wells didn't flinch. Karen Whitlo, he said, and I could see the finality in his tone. You're under arrest. Her face went pale. For what she demanded, panic creeping into her voice. You can't do that. You don't have any evidence. Oh, we have plenty, Wells said almost with a hint of amusement. Forgery, trespass, unauthorized surveillance, environmental tampering, and conspiracy to steal land. As the deputy moved forward to read her the charges, Karen's eyes grew wide. That's impossible, she gasped. You don't have anything on me. Well, Wells continued, pulling a folder from his vest. I think you'll find this interesting. He handed her a stack of documents, evidence that tied Karen directly to the land grab conspiracy. Her confidence shattered in front of everyone. She turned on Justin Marlowe, the man who had flown the drones and helped plant false evidence. You little rat, she shrieked. You betrayed me. Wells raised an eyebrow. He came clean last night. I think he realized who the real criminal here was. Karen staggered back as if she'd been slapped. The deputies moved in, cuffing her wrists and leading her to the patrol car. I watched the scene unfold, but the feeling in my chest wasn't joy. It wasn't even relief. It was just a quiet satisfaction, like a job finally completed. The neighbors began to emerge from their homes, some with hesitant glances, others with open disbelief. As Karen was escorted away, her protests echoed through the streets. "I built this community, I protected you all." No Wells muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "You controlled them." With Karen gone, the entire community began to unravel the truth about her. The forged documents, the fake jurisdiction, claims, the secret meetings, the manipulation. One by one, my neighbors came to me, some apologizing, some offering pies, others simply admitting they had been blind to what had been happening in their own backyard. I didn't ask for apologies, but I appreciated the honesty. The truth had a way of setting people free. The legal battle wasn't over. Candler Horizons, the developers behind the whole mess, tried to buy their way out of trouble. They offered me $740,000 to walk away from a racketeering lawsuit before it even went to court. It was a tempting amount, but I didn't want money, I wanted justice. I used some of the payout to buy a new tractor, and the rest went into savings. But that wasn't the real reward. The real victory came the day I knew my land was truly mine again. Months passed. The seasons changed. The land healed faster than I expected. Grass grew thick where the bulldozers once roamed. The birds came back. Even the old oak by the pond, scarred from their trespass, began to show signs of life again. Horizon Ridge, though, was a different story. The HOA was placed under state receivership, and the neighborhood that had once feared Karen began to wake up. No longer were they kept in the dark. The truth was out, and the fear that had plagued them lifted. The HOA was broken, and with it, Karen's reign. One quiet morning months later, I stood by the front gate, looking out over the land. The fence had been replaced with something stronger, a steel-reinforced gate that stood tall and proud. I'd put up a sign, "Private land, no HOA authority, protected." I placed my hand on the cool metal, breathing in the air, the silence now familiar. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I wasn't just a man who owned land anymore. I was a man who had fought for it and won.